Good evening. Podcast Pete is in the house, and in the house from north of the border is Jeff Bourgeois. And I wanted to bring on Jeff just so we could kind of give our podcast community down here a little idea what is going on as we put together a very important next step of what Podcast Pete has been working on, but Jeff has been working it on behind the scenes. So I said, come on, let's jump on and give our people a snapshot. So Jeff, just introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, and who you serve, and we'll get into our conversation and podcast.
I love it. And normally these are 3 short questions, I'm sure, but of course with me, I'm going to make it complicated. But at the end of the day, who I am, who I serve, what I do, I am a connector, and I am obsessed, and Pete and I think both share this obsession. I'm obsessed with finding ways to bring businesses and customers together in really, really unusual ways. And by unusual, I mean things that from the turn of the century, 100 years ago, networking was a thing and it worked very well. In the 1950s and 60s, we built relationships and that worked very well. And then somewhere around 2007, the world got crazy. We got iPhones, we got, social media, and people stopped having conversations. Mm-hmm. So really, truly, that's what I do. I help businesses tell their story. And my favorite places and ways to do that are through writing books, and also through podcasts and through community networking groups. And I'm a big fan of all things relationship marketing. So who I serve, I love the local businesses that help people live better lives. In our context for today, I love helping the medical professionals, the people who help with quality of life. I help them connect with their audience, and in this case, the senior community.
That's awesome. When I was selecting what podcasts are we going to put you on, I said Mastermind is where we met back 5 years ago, and you have a big thinker group on LinkedIn. So I said, Masterminder with thinkers. So I said, that's the essence of our relationship. You're a big thinker and you believe in the power of masterminds and how beneficial bringing people into a group to really pull out all the good ideas and leverage the minds coming together. So I want to just start off with this. When we look at businesses today, and you touched on it a little bit, I see people building this elaborate website, they spend all this money putting this infrastructure together, and they haven't gotten their first client. And they're thinking, well, I got to build it, and then once I build it, I'm hoping they'll come. Your philosophy is different. You get the clients first, then you start building around it, because if you have no clients, you have nothing. Explain to our viewers what you mean by that.
Well, I'm going to quote Field of Dreams because that inspires me a lot. The line in the movie is, if you build it, they will come. My version is, if I sell it, I will build it and they will come. But the reality is, I think a lot of businesses overcomplicate things. And I'm going to sound really, really practical, but if you're in business, one of the assumptions I have for you is that you're in business to make a profit, whether that's for your family or for your community or for something bigger than yourself. But the reality is, if you're a for-profit entity, whoever your stakeholders are, you need to make sure that they're being fed. So one of the things I like to look at is, what is the immediate path to cash? Because without cash flow, you're either going to be working too hard, you're going to be stressed out. And by the way, I work with a lot of professionals, whether it's doctors, lawyers, accountants. They work too hard because, they all bought into the lie. And, I'm a recovering accountant. I was told, you hang out your shingle and people come to you. Well, that's a lie. You've got to know how to communicate your story. You need to know who your audience is. So I came up with a very different approach to things. And one of the ways I determine, if there's a market for whatever offering is to either have a podcast and share it with people, or to have a workshop where you teach people. You did a bunch of workshops at a golf community teaching golf networking. The beautiful thing about creating a workshop first is it's very low cost, very low effort, and it helps you do two things, in my opinion. Number one, test the market. If people aren't willing to pay you, $30-$40 to be at a workshop, they're not going to pay you thousands of dollars for that problem in life in general. But the other thing is, by starting to get that word out, you can start to get some cash flow in while you build the relationships that you need to build your business. So one of the things I see a lot of people, they'll invest a whole bunch of money in a marketing plan or a business plan. If you don't have cash flow, you don't have a business. You're building a job where you're going to work yourself near to death over the years trying to keep up. So one of the things I do, Pete, that's a very, very unique is I have my 5x5 daily success habits. And it should not surprise anyone who's listened thus far. Every one of those habits are about, how do I get cash in the door today? Because if you don't get cash in the door today, you're not going to get cash in the door tomorrow. But the beautiful thing about it, a lot of people say, oh, that sounds very mercenary. All you care about is money. I would say I'm the total opposite. I care about the entrepreneurs. So if you don't care about the money, go get a job. If you want to do something, go teach at a college, go teach in your community, do volunteer stuff. But if you're standing here and saying, I'm in business and this is my business, my first question is, what's your cash flow? Where do you get that cash flow from? So we'll talk about the book projects, but the reality is I see a lot of, and you and I have had many of these conversations, people are addicted to being busy and they think busy has this badge of honor. But the reality is, I'm going to annoy some people at this point. If you're so busy that you're just doing and you're not thinking about what you're doing, you're just trying to check things off your checklist, that's actually incredibly lazy and it's dangerous. So one of the big activities that I think we've missed in modern times is actually strategically thinking about what we do. So taking 5 minutes on a Sunday to say, what do I need to do this week to call this week a success?
Mm-hmm. When you started Big Thinker, and I've seen your post on LinkedIn, they're thought-provoking. And I think what the lost art today is thinking, because you look at the big companies like the Facebooks, the Googles, all that, and TikTok, they're conditioning you to steal your time. Your time is the one thing. Everybody gets 24 hours. I guarantee you, Elon Musk doesn't spend 4 hours a day watching TV. And that's what I heard is the average. And you look at the average time on social media, it's not 10 minutes, it's hours. Yep. And you're scrolling and you're looking, you're training your brain for many shots of dopamine. So we wonder why we can't think anymore, why we can't read a book. It's because we've conditioned our brain on such short attention spans that we're not able to think. We're not able to use what this is intended to use, is to think about things and be intentional about how you do things, to not plan out your week. You're just going to go off of everybody else's priorities. Yep. So tell I love it when you told me when we first met and you shifted from being a CPA and you saw things that were happening with lots of businesses. And you alluded to it a little bit. You saw common patterns. And the common patterns is, if you don't get clients, you're out of business. Yep. And people struggle. So did that shift your thinking when you all of a sudden say, you know what, I've seen all these patterns. Now I'm going to go about building teaching people differently. What was that like when you all of a sudden the light bulb went off?
Well, it's funny, Pete, because a lot of people have told me, "Oh, you're crazy," or "You're seeing things," or But the reality is, as an accountant, I've seen more businesses fail than I care to acknowledge. And the reality is, when a business fails, it's not, "Oh, there's an empty storefront," or, "Oh, where am I going to go get stuff?" What people don't realize is, that was somebody's dreams that just went up in smoke. Most families don't survive the failure of a business. There's a lot of tension and stress that leads to marital breakdown. But more importantly, there are some entrepreneurs who don't survive. Rather than face failure, they choose suicide. And as an accountant, I was in a position in our industry. I believe accountants can and should do better. But the reality is, we're in such a position where we're expected to be scorekeeper. We're expected to keep people compliant and follow and file taxes. The reality is, nobody's looking ahead saying, "Okay, that's all well and good. We do need good books and records. We do need to stay current." But the reality is, filing a tax return doesn't give the business owner any insight into how they can grow their business. And unfortunately, most of the accounting profession, not all, but most, is heavily, it's kind of like driving a car, looking in the rear view mirror. You know where you've been, but are you really safely driving where you want to go?
Mm-hmm.
So that was the big aha moment, was that when business owners were getting advice, when they were seeking it, it was almost always backwards looking rather than forwards looking.
Mm-hmm.
So I got obsessed with it. And, I love big questions that don't have easy answers. And my number one question that I have, and I got this from Chet Holmes and a couple of others, but basically you should have, I think it was Tiago Forte, actually, now that I think about it, you should have a list of questions that aren't answerable, but you're always asking.
Mm-hmm.
And I think his list was 12 questions. That's why I confuse him with Chet Holmes, because Chet Holmes always also talks about 12 things. But my number one question is, how do I help small businesses grow?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be honest with you, Pete, there's a lot of noise out there. Everybody's saying you got to be on this platform. You got to learn this algorithm. You got to pay the toll to the gods of the big five marketing companies. But at the end of the day, if I can be really, really blunt, and hopefully the big five don't cancel us, they make money selling our attention.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about, these platforms are owned by billionaires selling our attention. And sadly, we give it away like it's free. But the reality is, if we're not paying attention to our business, if we're, mindlessly surfing or scrolling, our lives are worse off while we make somebody else another billion.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my big aha moment, that, all these small, and by the way, a lot of these big marketing companies, they're very nice. They train young people how to start businesses selling your attention on their platform.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a little bit dodgy in terms of morality. You're kind of getting into the dark space there. But, the reality is, they're teaching people how to part us with our money. But worse, they're teaching us, these young people, how to part us from our attention.
Yeah.
And if we don't manage our attention, you wake up, I see people in restaurants, they're out for dinner with their family and they're all scrolling on their phones. And then all of a sudden the waiter or waitress brings the bill, and it's like, "Oh, okay, let's go home and ignore each other at home." The big thing for me is that people have lost sight of the power of actual relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And for small business, I guarantee you, I'm a big fan of the number 12 as well. But if you have 12 strategic relationships, you can grow your small business as big as you want to without spending a dime on marketing and quite frankly, even on sales.
Yeah. You had explained to me a while back when it comes, because I had a digital business, I'm pretty sure that drove me to a stroke. So you were kind of nice when I would talk about cold traffic. You hit me with a velvet hammer, not a rail hammer. Why don't you explain to our viewers the analogy that you walked me through, cold traffic versus your warm traffic?
All right. So do you want me to? I'll share the math. I won't share the visual.
Okay.
But let's start with the faulty premise that everybody thinks I need more clients. And really, truly, what that means, I don't care what you are, whether you're a doctor, a chiropractor, a surgeon, more clients. The assumption is I have, let's say I have 5 clients today. Technically 6 is more, but most people talk about, oh, let's double. So if I have 5, I want 10. But the problem is, by doubling your clients, you're doubling the good, the bad, and the ugly, which means that you're literally doubling how many hours you put in. Now, that is an extreme example, but the reality is most professionals can't double their existing clients because they have to get better at managing, they have to get better at leading, more systems, more processes. But the magic of doubling is it doesn't have to be the number of clients, it might be the number, the revenue number. Now, the other big scary thing that the big 5 marketing companies don't tell you is the better you get at marketing and bringing in the normal model is you bring in a whole bunch of cold traffic, and then you have to warm them up and turn them from leads into prospects into clients. The better you get at marketing in that cold environment, the better you have to get at sales. And of course, the better you get at sales, then the better you have to get at marketing. And it becomes your business is focused on marketing and sales, not delivering service. And that's where I see a lot of local businesses struggle, is they double all of their clients, including the really annoying, I call them pain in the butt ones, but if you double that, you double the headaches you have in your business. So what I do, and this is based on the Pareto principle, where 20% of your results, 20% of your effort brings you 80% of your results. The reality is there's 20% of your clients that bring you 80% of your pain. So the very first thing I do is I look at the worst 20% of the clients and we send them gently somewhere else. Because they're the ones who arrive late for appointments. They're the one who complain about the fees. They drive us crazy, whether we know it or not. But the flip side of that, and this is where it gets fun, is I like to identify my top 20%. And I've done this math on any kind of business you can imagine. In almost every case, 20% of your clients bring you 80% of your profits. Which means that the other 80% of your clients are draining you in some way or other. Now, I'm not saying get rid of them. I'm just saying when you're starting out and you're looking to grow, instead of doubling the number of clients you have, look at your best clients and think about how can we clone them? How can we double them? And it's magical, because if you find better clients, you don't need to have all of the money going out. And I'll give you an example. I had a firm that was spending $10,000 a month on Facebook ads, and hopefully the Facebook lawyers won't come after us for this. But they were spending $10,000 in Facebook ads, generating 10,000 cold leads, and I'm talking ice cold. It was like somebody liked something and they got added to a list. But here's the thing. The owner of that business knew that within that 10,000, there was one client willing to pay 100,000. So this owner assured me that he was making a net profit of $90,000 on his Facebook ads. He spent 10,000, he earned 100,000. Therefore, he was ahead 90,000. Problem was his cash flow didn't represent that. And he said, after a year, I'm almost broke. I've refinanced my house. I've brought in all of these other things. What he wasn't counting, and this was so obvious, I really offended him. To get that $100,000 client, he was spending 10,000 on his Facebook ads and 100 and some thousand on salespeople. So he was actually going in the negative $10,000 a month. But he's like, but no, I'm getting 100,000 in every month. And I'm like, yes, and you're spending this money. So I think that's the biggest lie of cold traffic is, and by the way, the platforms all make it really easy to see your price per click, or, whatever the metric they want you to focus on, which is usually, for 10,000, he was only spending $1 per click through. They have the metrics, and by the way, whoever controls the metrics controls the narrative. They convinced him, despite his bank account, that he was making 90,000 profit a month. So that's the big thing. The aha for me was that the big marketing companies, they care about their shareholders, they care about their owners. Marginally, they care that we exist to keep putting money in the jukebox, so to speak. So that's my big thing with cold traffic, is it's never as cheap as they have you believe it is.
Yeah.
So always know what your total cost to acquire a customer is, whether it's additional. And by the way, the costs this guy wasn't even considering were administrative costs, like his extra lines for telephones, his long distance calls, administrative staff to handle inbound calls. So always be aware of the numbers in your business, and always prioritize cash coming in over the cash going out.
Yeah, and then there's a simple question everybody asks on cold traffic. The first question they ask is, what's your price? So now you're on the defensive. You got to justify your relationship, your value, all this kind of stuff in sometimes 10 seconds. And you're basing a decision that somebody's going to make on trying to convince them to do business with you in 10 seconds versus if you tell me, Pete, this person's, I say, Jeff, do you know such and such? You go, yeah, let me put you in touch with this person. I don't ask what's your price because I know it's somebody you trust. So I'm asking questions like, would you be able to do this, this, and this? And it's a different conversation. So you're now leveraging the relationship of the other person in such a positive way. It's not what's your price. And you're on your heels when somebody asks you that, because, hey, if you do, I think it's called, I forget the name of one of the companies out there, they send 3 leads to every person. So you got 3 people going to be calling you, and you're going to be making the decision on what price. That's all you have. You don't know the people. Yep. So I like that. I like that you have changed my thinking, because I was all over the digital world. And it was like, I was like driving myself to work as much as I couldn't keep up, because it's all, I'd have it figured out maybe for a week and they change the algorithm. And then you're back to zero. Got to learn all the different ways now. So it was like chasing your tail all the time.
Well, and Pete, it's a lot like going to Vegas. The odds are stacked. The house will always win.
Yes.
And when the house isn't winning enough, they change the rules. And that's, with social media. And by the way, the big 5, they're nice because they'll change the rules, and then they'll leak some rumors, and then they'll offer a training program so that you can, feel like you're gaming the system.
Yeah, like you're getting back. You're getting that information back. You almost get there, and then all of a sudden they change the rules again, and you're back to zero. So I want to get to what this week's, like, you told me, this was, I don't know how many months ago, but you said, Pete, I want you to practice doing podcasts. And I said, okay, is that all I do? Yeah, just do podcasts. And then you said something like, Pete, you're going to love it. You're going to be hooked. I said, well, I've been hooked on other stuff. I wouldn't like, but I'd like to be hooked on something like that. And sure enough, I was, because you get to know people, you build relationships, my belief system changes every day because I get to dig into things that I'm curious about, that all of a sudden a person will say that allows me to dig into something that is real time. Yeah. So I'm doing all these podcasts, and then you said, okay, I'll work on the back part of it. And I said, yeah, that's good, because I'm loving what I'm doing. So this week we started the collaborative book. Why don't you explain to my viewers, what does that mean to collaborate versus compete? What's the benefits of stories and something that everybody's helping each other with?
I love it. Well, here's the thing, and I'm going to just share a little bit of math first, and then I'll get into what we're doing. Mm-hmm. But study after study after study has shown that clients you get through referral stay with you longer, spend more money with you, and they're more willing to forgive you if you make mistakes. Mm-hmm. So that's alone, the math there is exponentially better when you receive referrals. Now, a funny side effect is that clients who make referrals also tend to stay with you longer, spend more money with you, and they're more forgiving when you make mistakes. So when you acquire clients by cold traffic and paid traffic, they don't bother referring to you because they assume that you get your clients through paid traffic.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So one of the magical things, and this is on my whiteboard almost every given day, is how do we enable and facilitate more sharing and more referrals so that we get better quality clients. Mm-hmm. And you can research it all you want. I promise you'll find study after study that proves this very thing. But the better clients tend to come through referrals. Mm-hmm. And I could get into the neuroscience of it. I could tell you the psychology of it. But the reality is, empirically, it's been proven time and time again. So the idea is, and this is the question I started with, if referral clients are better than clients acquired through marketing, why does everybody want us to go through marketing? Well, I'll give you billions of reasons why the big five want us to do that path. But I want you to ask yourself, do they have Jeff's best interest at heart? Do they care about Pete? Do they care about our families? Honestly, I don't think they care about our communities, let alone our countries, because a lot of them, their taxes go to wherever jurisdiction they want it to. They're just looking after their shareholders, not you and me and our communities. So one of the aha moments is if you can get better at referrals, and if you can build those relationships locally, everybody says, oh, shop local, but the minute Amazon's 10 cents cheaper, people buy on Amazon, if price, as you've mentioned, is the only criteria. Mm-hmm. But the reality is, I'm a big fan of Bob Burg and John David Mann in their book, The Go-Giver. If you add value to people, price becomes irrelevant. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people think, oh, no. Well, everything's a commodity until it isn't. And what I mean by that is buying books, it can be a commodity and you're going to Amazon and you're buying it cheaply. Or, maybe you're a local bookstore and you have a coffee shop and you have local authors coming in and people become part of the community. Those people that go to local coffee shops / bookstores, they're not shopping on Amazon unless the book they want can't be obtained through their local store. Mm-hmm. So that's the parameters of it. But the premise I came up with is that most local businesses, especially the specialists, the experts, they're really good at whatever it is that they do, where they've spent years honing whatever their profession is or their craft or their expertise. Most aren't good at marketing and or sales.
Mhm.
And again, most aren't looking for 10,000 new clients or patients. They're looking for 20, maybe 30. So what we've created, and I want to thank you for playing along with this, is a book series. We're calling it, I think our working title we agreed was Kennesaw Happenings.
Mhm.
But the reality is, for those businesses that serve the senior space, sorry, but your seniors aren't on TikTok. They're not on, maybe they're on Instagram, maybe they're on Facebook, but they don't want to spend their time glued to a screen.
Mhm.
And we need to recognize where people are at, and we need to meet them there. So
Mhm.
what we created was this book project, and the premise is really, really simple. A physical book can be handed from person to person. It can be given as a gift, but in my experience, it's a great way to demonstrate expertise and for people to ask their questions without having to go watch. If I need spinal surgery, I'm not going to go to YouTube and watch 10 hours of videos.
Mhm.
I want to know, is this person my surgeon of choice? And
Mhm.
do I like them, and things like that? So the idea we came up with, and the idea is, we don't want you to have to get better at marketing. You don't have to get better at sales. I'm an introvert, and the most introverted person I know can say, "Hey, Pete, I wrote this book. I'd love your feedback." You don't need to get into the sales pitch. But basically, what we believe in, and what fuels me, is that if people get to know, like, and trust you as a human being, they understand that you're the expert in their community. Um, when they need whatever it is that you offer, they're not going to the Yellow Pages or Google and searching forever to find, somebody. The I actually heard something on the radio about the Gen Zers buy everything on their phones right now. They don't even have laptops, or, they're not using computers. Well, the seniors community, they still use their phones, but oddly, they pick it up and dial. So you want to be easily reached. And I think this, Pete, you and I have had this conversation. A lot of people do digital marketing to try and reach seniors. The problem is, they're not reaching seniors where they are. They're not going out to the communities where these people live. They're not, engaging with them where their hobbies, their activities are. Um, and it's really a bad business move, to say, come on over to TikTok and watch me dance while you got to meet your audience where they are.
Mhm. Yeah, I had a lady that I spoke with. She's an attorney, and she moved her dad up here to be closer to her. And through different things that happened, he was displaced from our place. And I said, "Where is he going to go?" And she goes, "I don't know." Because you can look at a website and go, "Okay, it looks pretty." But do
Yep.
you know the leadership behind that website? Do you
Yep.
know the person that runs that place? And the people in the community know these kind of things. All my people have been on my podcast. They know the communities. They know the ones to stay away from. They know the ones to support. So you can't depend on what you see online, because everybody's going to make it look beautiful.
Yep.
But behind the beauty is a true story. And that's where, when you encourage me to podcast, is finding out the stories of the people in the community, finding out the good people, because there's a big thing. I'm in a safe people class, which means hang around safe people. There's toxic people out there, and you can't avoid that. They're out there, but put yourself in a community of safe people, so that everybody's looking out for each other. And so that kind of in itself is like the givers get, like you talked about Bob Berg and John Mann, is like when you are in a community of givers, it's magical because everybody's looking to give, to serve. They're looking to, how can I help Jeff? How can I help Pete? And you're doing the same to everybody else. So you don't allow the takers to take, you just bring yourself in the community of givers and you make it safe for all your community to do business. And it's a lot less costly and it's definitely safer.
Well, and the funny thing is, Pete, a lot of the seniors, I mean, they grew up in a world where people didn't lock their doors. Like it's about that safety and the vetting of I don't want to look on Google. No offense to Google reviews, but I don't care how many 5-star reviews a clinic has. If I need surgery, I'm going to talk to somebody I know who's been there. I'm going to talk to somebody because. And by the way, I'll just make fun of a lot of the senior communities, not naming names, but they hire young 30-something-year-olds who build wonderful, beautiful websites that they'd want to visit. And I know for a fact that a lot of seniors hate virtual tours of a property. Mm-hmm. They want to get on the phone because it's not just the walls. They want to know what's the vibe. I'm going to be living in this building. Does it smell like pickled cabbage? Or, like they want to experience the entire thing. And that's where I think a lot of people miss the boat. It's, well, if you don't want to do a virtual tour on our website, too bad.
Yeah.
Well, again, here's an idea. Have a community ambassador who's one of the community, and they volunteer to do the tour. And, they can say, Tuesdays we do this, Thursdays we do this. And again, I see a lot of community or senior centers where they put all of their calendar online. What happened to sending people, I'm sorry, I was raised Catholic. If you took away the bulletin every Sunday, the older generation would have rioted. Like I'm sure right now the churches have wonderful online, but I know there's still people that want that physical, tangible copy of something. And by the way, it's not that expensive.
No, and it really isn't, but it's a change of thinking that your audience is people that like print. They like to touch and feel it. They want to see it. They want to see they don't want to stare at a screen, a little tiny screen, and try to figure out it all. So know your audience, which you've taught me very well, and then be able to serve that audience with what they want. And so I know you mentioned, okay, just for those, I will provide a document. So you have mentions in there. So you have people, I love it that it's called the call to experience. And we were on a call, and instead of the person said call to action, call to experience. If somebody wants to experience doing business with us, they can decide what level they want. It could be $50. It could be $500. Each level, we're going to show them tremendous value because trust and results are everything. They trust you with $1 and you deliver $10 of value, they're going to trust you with $2 because they know you're going to deliver 10 times that or whatever the number is. So I want to encourage our community out there, when you're looking at spending money, really look at what kind of money you spending to drive what traffic to you. If you're driving cold traffic, man, look at the odds there. It's a very unbalanced equation there. You want to go with the warm traffic, people that know you, people that trust you, that people that can depend that if Jeff says this, I know I can take it to the bank. Yeah. And that's the complete difference between the cold and the warm. So we want to make available this resource guide so our seniors can touch and feel it. They can the vendors can give it out. And in this particular one, there's 60 plus people, that at least 60 that'll be helping to promote your business. So, you think, well, I got 2 salespeople. How would you like to have 60 plus that are telling your story out in the marketplace? And it starts with the podcast, because if you're not on the podcast, you can't get in the book. So your story is going to be in either through a mention or through a chapter. It's going to be in the book some way, but you can't come to us and say, I want to be in your book without going through a podcast, because that's when we can build a relationship, see the kind of person it is, and build that trust with that person, vice versa. And the ones that we feel that are the takers, we say bye-bye. We say thank you, but we'll see you later. Go by somebody else.
Think, Pete, if we could expand on that slightly, because we, both you and I'm going to say this from my perspective, watching you have a giant heart, and you are part of the community. So you're looking at, sorry, but we wouldn't allow stranger danger. You don't want a stranger who's going to harm your community. You wouldn't willingly let them in the building. So the reality is, for the kind of people that are going to resonate with you, they care deeply about who they serve. They care about the Kennesaw community. And also they're probably part of some philanthropic group. Maybe they're part of Chamber of Commerce. Maybe they're part of, the Lions or the Rotary, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
They care about more than just dollars.
Yes.
And probably above all else, they value relationships, because, and I don't want to steal anything from the BNI group, but the reality is, if they don't understand networking, they're not going to get value out of the podcast. And we want to be clear, if they're not going to get value, we don't want to take their time, energy, attention.
Right.
But then for somebody who wants to be in the book project is in fact invitation only. And if Pete says you don't belong in the book, I give full credit to Pete. The reality is, we want people, and I want people to understand this, your business has to be referable. If you are all about the dollars and not about the community, guess what? No matter what we do in the book, people will come back to Pete and say, why did you put that person in the book?
Mm-hmm.
So we need to filter it and make sure that these are high quality businesses delivering high quality, whether it's surgery or chiropractic or physio. You got to care about your patients or your clients. If you don't, sorry, but you don't belong in the book. But the thing you also need to recognize is that seniors are humans first, clients, patients, whatever second. So if you're just looking at how do I get more, you're not going to enjoy this long term. And we're genuinely looking for long-term relationships. Mm-hmm. And as Pete mentioned, you have a choice. If you get, and our goal is that every edition of the book will be put in the hands of at least 100 people that would benefit and resonate with it. Mm-hmm. We're not promising the moon or the stars, but what we are saying is that seniors talk to seniors. Seniors compare, over breakfast at the community. Did you go see that doctor? Did you go see this dentist? But the reality is, we're targeting a very niche group, and again, we're not looking for global domination. We just want to bring value to the community of Kennesaw, which, Pete, you've been there how many decades?
38.
Okay, so Pete's been there a while. So Pete cares about the community. But the reality is, I don't know a single senior person, unless they're truly a shut-in, but the ones who live in communities and the active living communities, they know other seniors.
Yes.
And if you do the networking math, the way the world agrees, there's research, it's called Dunbar's number, that the average person maintains about 150 quality relationships. Our goal is that this book will spread, and again, it's deliberately meant to be shared. And I have no numbers to back this up in Kennesaw, but my guesstimation is that when we release the March edition, or sorry, when we release the April edition, people are going to give the March edition to their friends because, well, that was last month. We're going to be building on it, and we want it to be a series.
Mhm.
So we're not looking at this as just a one and done. We have different levels, as Pete mentioned, and have a chat with Pete. The basic level is you're listed in our directory. It's kind of like, the old school yellow pages. We share your business name, your contact details, what you do. Very simple. That is the lowest investment. And really, truly, we don't want to take anyone's last dollar. If somebody starts there and they get some value, we know they'll come back for the next level, which is a summary where we're going to share some takeaways from the podcast. And then we have a chapter contributor, and we have fancy names for all of these. We're not going to get into them. If you have enough of an investment and enough of a story, we'll turn your podcast episode into a chapter in the book. And then for those who want to invest a little more, we do a solo book where you are part of the Kennesaw Happening series, but you have pretty much cover to cover your own book. We do that for those who want to grow a little bit bigger, a little bit faster.
Mhm.
But really, truly, we're helping you become an expert that Pete's community of seniors can trust and do business with.
Awesome. Let me give them. So if you're out there and listening to this, go to podcasterpetekane.com, or you can call me direct, 404-428-3006. Let me go over again, podcasterpetekane.com. You'll go to the link tree. The top one is be a guest. The next one is the book project. So select the level you want to accelerate your business. And if you're not sure, call me. I take calls, and there is a thing where you can talk to me 4 to 5 each day. If you're not sure, you want to ask me some questions, you have 4 opportunities to do that. I want to thank Jeff for being with us in the evening up there, because we're jumping into family time. And thank you so much for taking the time to really bring, I love it, masterminding and thinking together. So thank you so much for sharing. And just know that you have 2 people that want to serve, and we serve in very different ways, but very similar ways. And this is adding massive value to our people that are in our community of givers. So Jeff, any parting, your last thought before we go?
Well, I just want to say thank you, Pete. I know this initiative has been near and dear to our hearts, and I look forward to connecting with people in the Kennesaw community and helping you bring these books into reality. If anybody really wants to see what we do, go be a guest on Pete's podcast. I know Pete's got a bunch of samples and books in his library around his office. But we also have a couple. If you go to Amazon.com and look for Pete Kane, there's a bunch of books that Pete's written. So I think we have the Atlanta Guide and a few others. But we look forward to having conversations and helping people connect with the seniors community. So thank you, Pete.
Awesome. And I appreciate you, Jeff. And it's been enjoyable to work with you, and I look forward to many, many years. So thank you so much.
Awesome.